when I was 14, the Czech nationals was for the junior teams was played in my hometown, and one of the coaches from a team from Kladno were watching our practice, and he just approaches our parents if I would be interested to trying out for our academy, the following year. So talking about being in the right place, right time, just by an accident, I got invited somewhere where I would probably never be invited before if they were not playing there, and then they didn't see our practice. And
Right.
they always say, you never know who's watching, right? So it's one of those times that it was just a meaningful practice, in my little small town, and end up being something that pretty much changed my life.
That was Ladislav Kohn, and you are listening to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolak.
Just watch me now.
Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolak, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolak, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, welcome back, or welcome to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolak. I am your host, Jason Podolak, and today this is, I believe, the second episode of 2023, and you're going to be listening to a conversation I had with Ladislav Kohn. Ladislav Kohn is a former teammate of mine. We played together in St. John's for the Maple Leafs. And Laddie, as I called him, or as his nickname, or Kohner, but usually Laddie, he got traded for David Cooper, who was also a teammate of mine with Toronto. So he was with the Calgary Flames organization, Laddie was, and he was a 7th-round pick to them, and he came over in a trade with David Cooper. So we played together for, I think, an entire season, maybe a little bit more. So got to know Laddie quite well. Heck of a winger, good, solid, chippy player with good skill, could score goals, saw the ice real well, and he was a good teammate. He was a bit of a quiet guy. He at the time didn't really trust his English a whole lot, and so didn't talk a whole lot. And that was actually one of his worries of coming on the podcast. Is 20 years later, with English being his second language, still he wasn't super confident with his English. But my goodness, I mean, Laddie did fantastic on this interview, and his English is great. And I have mad respect for anyone who can speak more than one language, as I can barely get around with one. But so yeah, that's where we met, and really at the time, and I've covered this before a little bit on the podcast, is like we never talked, or we never knew the history of guys back in the 90s, because the internet didn't exist the way it does now with Hockey DB and elite prospects, and you can just be one click away from a guy's resume essentially. And when guys came over, you didn't really talk a lot of hockey, to be honest. It was just guys being guys and getting to know each other, and oftentimes you talk about anything other than hockey. And so we didn't get into any war stories or glory days stuff. So I didn't know Laddie's story at all until this conversation, until we dug in to where he came from, and where he came from was the Czech Republic, and not only Czech Republic, but I guess Czechoslovakia, pre-90s Czechoslovakia, which was communist Czechoslovakia. And so we talk about him growing up in his small town, his introduction to hockey, what life was like there at that time, and his exposure to the NHL, and who his idols were, and all that stuff, which I just found completely fascinating. And then the big piece that I didn't know was him coming over to Canada as a 17-year-old, as an 18-year-old actually, without knowing a word of English, without knowing what the WHL was, just knew that the Brandon Wheatkings had drafted him in the European draft, and that his advisor thought it was a good idea for him to go if he wanted to get drafted and play in the NHL. So it was his first plane ride ever at 18 to come to Canada, to go to Brandon, a town he never knew, to play in a league he didn't understand, with a language that he couldn't speak. Talk about courage, right? Like, talk about passion and want. And one of the things that he doesn't talk about on the episode that you're going to hear, but he told me after we completed the episode, was what he did once he got over to Canada. And that was that he left this academy system in Czech Republic, which he talks about, or in Czechoslovakia. And the teachers there were very unhappy with him choosing to go to Canada. To pursue this hockey career and this hockey dream, and they told him that if he did leave, I guess this one in particular teacher said that, if you leave, you are going to come back here and you will have to work in the steel mill. I guess there was a local steel mill there in town, and was kind of threatening him to go. And anyways, what Ladislav did was he did go to Canada, and he did get drafted by the Calgary Flames, and he did sign a pro contract. And when he got that first pro check, he took a picture of that check and he sent it back to Czechoslovakia, to his teacher, to just show her that he was not coming back, and that he did make it happen, and he was able to pursue his dream. So I think that was a really cool snapshot of and I want to tell that story here now in the intro, because that kind of encapsulates what Laddie is and what he's all about. He played the game with an edge. He had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He was always trying to prove somebody wrong, or prove himself right, and it did him great. He played a long time. He played in the NHL for almost 3 solid seasons. He had over 180 games played, and yeah, his story is quite remarkable, and it also is cool because it comes on the heels of the World Junior Championships, where Czech Republic and Slovakia had such great showings here in the 2023 tournament, with the Czech Republic actually winning with the silver medal, and being the only team to beat Canada. And then we're talking this from a country that has like 12,500 people playing hockey. Calgary, the city of Calgary, has like 14,000 registered hockey players. So for Czech Republic to compete on a world stage is quite remarkable. We talk about the development aspect in Czechoslovakia. We also talk about his time with the Red Wings. He was able to be part of that historic group of Red Wings with like 8 NHLers in one locker room. He was there. We talk about Hasek and his insanity at practice and his approach to the game. We talk about Yzerman and his leadership skills, and we talk about Brett Hall and what he was all about. And yeah, we just talk hockey. We talk hockey for almost 2 hours. For me, it was awesome just to hear what life was like, even like the political landscape. We cover a little bit about how they separated and why, and what the hockey was like there, and who his idols were or weren't, and what his exposure was to the NHL and his own journey. And I wish we did a better job of covering his journey, because we barely even tapped into to his pro career and where he went and what he was able to do. But I believe you are going to love this episode. I know I sure did. I left with a smile on my face. It's quite remarkable what passion and a big heart can do for a player, and the things that Ladislav was able to do by coming over to a new continent to pursue his dreams was pretty fantastic and inspiring. So without further ado, I bring you my conversation with Ladislav Kohn. Laddie, thanks for joining us today on the program.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Happy to be here. It's raining weather in California, so a perfect time to stay home
and stay safe. Ladislav was just telling me about. I'm not a news guy, so anyone knows me knows that the news channel is not on very often. That is on purpose. Usually, I find it depressing, so we don't usually have it on very often. A little bit of put my head in the sand kind of guy when it comes to that. But I guess, yeah, there's massive rainfalls and flooding in Southern California, and a lot of bad stuff happening there. So sorry for anyone down there dealing with that stuff. And Laddie chose to come inside and have a podcast today instead. So I like your choice there, Laddie.
Gotta fill my time. So better than be driving it outside than doing other things. But this is a good way to fill my time.
Awesome. Yeah, Laddie and I just reconnected. Actually, he reached out. He has his son is playing hockey over in a prep school there, and we were having some chats about Jacob, and we're able to reconnect about our history. And anyways, I was like, geez, Laddie, you'd be a great guest to have on if you want to come on. And Laddie always jokes about his poor English, but I think his English is quite strong. So I guess you guys can be the judge of Laddie's English here, but I think he does just fine. Laddie and I crossed paths, and I mentioned that in the intro in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. We also were able to play against each other a little bit in the AHL, and actually we did play against each other in the WHL, but we were in different divisions at the time, so probably don't remember each other too well from that time. We only went out east once a year, but I want to start there. Well, maybe we won't start there. Maybe we should go back just a little bit farther, because I want to know how a young Ladislav Kohn from the Czech Republic ends up in the Western Hockey League, and all the craziness and the decisions that must have had to happen for you to do that at such a young age. But let's just take back to Czech Republic and even growing up there and wanting to play hockey. How did hockey cross your path, and why did you choose a sport?
I mean, not just for me, but probably for anybody. Things just don't happen right away. There's so many ups and downs, and then twists and turns. Anybody you talk to, the road's always never a straight path, right? So it's sometimes you got to find your ways. But very, I guess, short version would be, some of the things that just happen just by accident or cause out of forces that were involved. For me, who started getting into hockey was just one of my friends that was living in my apartment building. Just one day showed up at my door and is like, "Hey, I'm going to this tryout. You know, I don't want to go by myself. Do you want to come with me?" I was like, where are you going?" He was like, "Well, I'm going hockey." And like, I never really skated. I never really played. I don't have any gear. He's like, don't worry about it. Everything, we're gonna get everything, all the gear, everything. It's gonna be all set up there. Just come out. And I was like, sure, why not? So that's basically how I started hockey. And growing up in communist country, I guess you could say it back then. Getting involved in anything, everything was provided for you. You didn't have to pay anything or spend any money. So for parents to send their kids to do any type of sport or any type of activity, everything was all set up. Just as long as you want to put the time in and show up and go play. So that's
How old would you
basically
have been in there, laddie?
how I
How
started.
old would you have been when that was happening?
What's that?
How old would you have been when that was happening, when that guy came to your door?
Oh, I was 6 years old. I think first time I skated, actually, back then, when all the ponds and lakes still would freeze and we still get the snowfall. I think first time when we got out there, try ice skate was maybe I was 4 or 5 years old, and my dad just took me out, and but it was nothing that we were just fooling around. I could probably barely stand up, and then just walking around on a frozen lake. So that was my probably first introduction. But yeah, when I was 6, that's when I really got into organized hockey, and that's basically how I started.
So, was your dad a hockey player at all? Was he exposed to the sport?
No, none of my families were involved in any sports. My mom she was an educator. She was a teacher. My dad was a construction or working in the construction industry. So we never really have anybody I could follow in their footsteps. And then my brother was always at school as well.
Right.
So sports were I guess part of everybody's family, but to kind of follow somebody in their footsteps or do something that my parents were doing, is nothing like that.
Right. So, I mean, young kid growing up, I mean, me contrasting that to, life in Canada. And, I remember when I fell in love with hockey was like legitimately fell in love with the sport and sitting in front of the TV was 1981 when the Canucks went to the Stanley Cup Finals, right? So I'm from Vernon, British Columbia. Vancouver's the closest NHL team. It was on CBC, and we'd follow Stanley Cup playoffs, and Richard Brodeur was in net, and Thomas Gradine, and I can remember most of the players. And I at 5 years old would sit in front of that TV and watch essentially every second of the games, and that was when I knew that I liked hockey and I wanted to play it and everything else, right? And then so that exposure to the NHL is really what brought me into it as a fan, and then obviously as a player. So for you, like growing up in Czechoslovakia, communist Czechoslovakia, was there pro hockey then? Was there exposure to the NHL? Was there any big names that you knew about growing up that you maybe wanted to be like or could emulate?
Yeah, I mean, some of that came way later when I was still playing. As you probably know, spending some time in Europe, the number one sport in Europe is soccer. So I think if there was any sport that anybody would follow, or we would have some idols, all my idols, early on, where everybody was just soccer players. That's what was on TV. That's what Czechoslovakia back then was really good at, and we had some really strong teams, and we had a lot of success. So if we were watching something, then it would be probably soccer. I think that the first time I really took any kind of interest when I was 10 years old. Obviously I was continue playing on a team, and still to these days, once you get on a team, you usually with the team, till you 16, 17, 18 years old. So there's not that much turnover, and then they usually just one team in a city. So once you get on, and if you're good enough, you usually stay there the whole time until you get better. Or you're playing in a small town, which was kind of my case eventually. But you stay where you at pretty much. Uh, it could be for your whole career, pretty much. But like I was saying, when I was 10 years old, we had a sports academy, or sports schools back then, which was getting a little more popular. But uh, initially, I think it was started for all the soccer kids that were playing, and then kind of that they expanded to it. They added athletics, and then part of my sports school was hockey. So the whole entire team, everybody had to switch schools, and we end up going to the sports school, which was located right next to the hockey rink. So since I was 10 years old till I left my hometown. I was going through sports school, and then practices with that was very convenient. It was kind of the new modern, kind of like what the prep school is all about, where you just have everything on a campus. And we had the same thing. We the soccer stadium, or the indoor stadium, everything was right there, athletic facility. So we did, not just hockey, but we grew up doing all the sports uh, that you can pretty much imagine, that from track and field to to regularly playing soccer, and then just going to hockey practices on top of that.
Right. Fantastic. Yeah, that sounds like an awesome environment to grow up in. With regards to, like, when did the NHL? So was the NHL on your radar? And I don't even mean at 10 years old as a player, like that you wanted to be an NHL or you knew the league existed. But like, was there any knowledge of that pro league, or was the hockey playing happening in Czechoslovakia more focused on the national pro league there?
So you gotta kind of, it's kind of funny when I hear people talking about communists, and they think they know what it's like, but unless you live it and you actually experience it, I think it's really hard for people to really understand what that looks like, and what people have to go through. We had two TV stations. There was no really any outside media that you could follow. Very limited news in the newspapers. Anybody that were the pioneers that left Czechoslovakia back then to play in the National Hockey League. there was no way they're gonna, especially if they would have any type of success, they would put something like that in the newspapers to kind of expose people that there's an outside world, and that people can succeed and do other things and play in another league. So the propaganda machine was very, very strong, and I think uh, anything that was promoted was geared to, if anything, just a national team, and probably the Eastern European bloc countries, that was heavily promoted, and that was probably the only exposure that you can get. There was news here and there, but it was like a little small droplet. So I think me as a young boy from tiny little town, that it would, unless I would really seek for it, or
Yeah.
had outside kind of help to guide me where to look. I wouldn't even know it.
So the national team then was like the compass, right? Like that's where if you were a good hockey player under communist rule there in in Czechoslovakia, like that'd be the holy grail, right? If you could play for the national team and compete internationally potentially one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for anybody that we're looking to be somewhere, have their goal national team. That was like you were saying, the holy grail. But when I was 10 years old, there was the World Championships in Prague, and somehow my grandpa got a couple tickets, and we actually went to see a game, Canada playing against Czechs, and famously Czech Republic beat Canada in the finals of winning the World Championships at home. So that was probably my first exposure that, oh man, there's some really really good players. They're players outside, Russia, Germany, or other countries that we would always only had an opportunity to watch, like Sweden or Finland.
Right.
So watching Canadian players, I remember just watching the game. I don't even know if I follow the Czech guys, because I knew all those guys from TV or watching the matches, but watching players like Steve Yzerman, who was a young stud back then, and he was amazing, and so I was immediately drawn to something I never seen before, and even the Canadian jerseys, I think they're still to this day is probably one of the nicest jerseys that there are.
Yeah.
So having an opportunity to watch that game, watch those players, and then hockey being Canadian sport, to watch probably some of the best players be on the ice same time. It was pretty amazing, and like I said, I was 10 years old, so I think that was the first time I kind of took interest in hockey, and I was pretty amazed, and kind of what draw me to it was watching Steve Yzerman, and when I found out that there was going to be a poster in one of our sports magazine, I think I stood in the line to make sure I you're laughing, but even to get a sports magazine to at the newspaper stand, it was just not automatic all the time. Sometimes you have to really really know somebody to make sure you got there on time, or save you an issue to really get that magazine. So I got it, and I remember I had it above my bed for a long long time. Probably my parents didn't take it down until years later after I moved out, but it was there for a very long time, and eventually, fast forward, I end up in Detroit, and somehow I end up sitting next to Stevie Y's stall.
Oh man.
And I just couldn't believe it that something like that translated from me being at that game at 10 years old, seeing somebody for the first time, and be so drawn to him. Eventually end up sitting next to him in the locker room. So that was kind of circle being completed. It was kind of surreal moment, and it was very exciting. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's mind blowing. That's super cool. It kind of makes the hair in the back of my neck stand up. Did you? And I bet you never told them that story either, did you? Or did you?
Well, eventually I did. I mean, I was talking about being starstruck, right? He's sitting next to one of the best captains at all times, Hall of Famer, all the accolades that you can think of, what he done as a player, as a person now, of what he's doing as a manager for. So I think I sat next to him for maybe three months, and I think honestly the first month I don't think I said anything. I just didn't want to bother him because it was getting close to the playoffs. Everybody was getting ready. I didn't really know what to even ask him, even though I had a million questions, which probably some talking about downfalls, I was always not sure, what if I'm allowed to ask some of these guys to any questions. So I was sitting there for about a month, and after a month, Steve was just sitting there, just relaxing, and he was wondering if I even spoke English. So he just turned to this young buddy and like, do you speak English? And then we started talking, and it's like, you've been sitting here for a month, you haven't said a word. I thought you don't speak English at all, and I'm not sure how good my English was back then, but he could not be more nicer. And I think I mentioned a story to him, and maybe I probably apologize why I didn't say anything, but uh,
Right.
he's such a nice, an amazing guy that I wish I would kind of bother him every day, asking questions and what could I done, and how can I get better, and all questions that anybody would have. But being so close to the playoffs, and I know how much the team and winning and him being a captain meant to him. So I didn't want to bother him too much. So I left him alone. But yeah, he could not be more of a nicer guy than he is.
That's super fantastic. Holy smokes. Um, yeah, I mean, I've talked about it a little bit on the podcast before. Like, I remember my first year in the NHL, and I've told the story on here before, but it was right before I got traded to Toronto at the trade deadline. Like, I didn't even know there was a trade deadline. Like, you talk about being green and naive, right? Like, in the NHL, and like, didn't really understand the gravity of what that day was, or that maybe I was even able to get traded. But it was like a week and a half earlier, and I was up in the NHL with the Panthers, and we cruised into Pittsburgh and played against Mario Lemieux, who was my Steve Yzerman for you, right? Like, that was my guy. Posters everywhere, Penguins emblem painted on my bedroom wall, right? Like, I absolutely worshipped Mario growing up as a young hockey player and as a teenager. And then on my birthday of all days, I'm in Pittsburgh playing against Mario, like on the same ice, right? Like, and there you are sitting in Izzy's next to Izzy's stall, and it's like there was a surrealness about it for sure. And I've mentioned it before. Like, I was in the moment, and like I was definitely like soaking it up, but I regret not ever feeling like I was grateful to be there, but I didn't almost feel like I was supposed to be. If that makes any sense, right? Like,
No, no, totally.
yeah, like, this is the guy, like, this is the god, this is like, oh my gosh, and now here I'm playing against him. It almost didn't seem right. And ironically, now I'm talking about mindset with players and working with teams on it and stuff. And that's kind of that, a little bit of a limiting belief there, right? Even though I knew he was a good player, like, I'd never got to the point mentally that I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, this, it was just a way different feeling. And I'm sure that first month you're sitting beside Stevie, that's probably exactly what you were running through your head too.
Yeah, no, that totally. It, some of the moments are surreal. Like, even I was in the league for a few years by then. I running through players that were amazing players themselves and Hall of Famers, but being sitting next to somebody that you you idolize since you were 10 years old, I think that put it into another level of respect, and more than anything, I just watch what he did as a captain, how, and then listen.
Right.
I felt like there was uh, not my place to even say anything, just to kind of soak in. Uh, you're sitting in a locker room, not just Stevie, but you're sitting in a locker room with 14, 15 Hall of Famers. That's I, I feel like for anybody, that's kind of overwhelming. A lot of teams have one, two, three, um, maybe just one, but you end up in the locker room where it's pretty much or half of the team are Hall of Famers, or back then future Hall of Famers. It's definitely overwhelming, at least for me.
Right.
I was there with Sean Avery, so that's the only guy who didn't get timid by it. It was definitely not overwhelming for him. I can
Who's that?
I can tell you that he had a ton of confidence and self belief himself. And
Who was the name you said though? I missed the name.
Sean Avery.
Oh, Sean Avery. Yeah, that seems about right, I guess. Yeah, he was a mouthpiece, that guy. It was funny. I've told a story about him too, because I played against him. I think it was in the minors, and yeah, it was in the minors, and he was with Detroit in the minors at that time. And I might have gotten that wrong. But definitely played against him. It was Detroit. Whether I was up or not, I think he was down. But he was like, he took trash talk to like a whole new level. Like, like he did research. Like he knew stuff that I didn't think anyone was supposed to know. And for whatever reason, I was his guy that day, and he was just all over me that entire game. It was hilarious.
I mean, he was like that 24/7.
Yeah.
We're out there in Detroit for the playoffs or before the playoffs. It was just I don't know if it was self-confident or that was just his personality. I think there was a few times the guys had to tell him, you got to tone it down a little bit, just know your place a little bit. But for him, that was Sean, right? And eventually, I feel like he had a really, really successful career, and he made a trade for himself. That was his game, that was his personality, and I don't know how many games he ended up playing in NHL, but I feel like he had a very successful career at the end.
Sure he did. Yeah, I mean, especially, and I don't have it in front of me right now either how many games he played, but for the amount of games he did play, he's definitely like a household name, really, right? Like everyone knows Sean Avery or a Sean Avery story or has some opinion about him. So he was definitely a polarizing guy. But what was, getting back to Yzerman, and because I went to camp actually, Laddie, and you probably don't even know that, but that was I went to Europe, went to Japan. Thought I was like, I actually retired, went to Japan and played. And then I kind of like, well, you know what? I think I can still play, and I think I can still play in the NHL. And I wanted to give it another chance. And I got a tryout with Ken Holland and Mike Babcock with the Wings. So that was like the last kind of professional thing that I did, was went to training camp, went to Traverse City, played an exhibition game in Minnesota. And anyways, I hurt myself, and that was the end of it. But that experience, like that, whatever I was there, like the month I was there or whatever with the Red Wings, and it was roughly around, I was 30, so it would have been around 96, 95, 96, was incredible as far as from a culture standpoint, and how the guys treated each other and how they treated me, and like what the whole atmosphere was like there. So you were a part of that whole engine, and sitting beside the centerpiece of that engine, and Steve Yzerman. What was that room like, and what was you mentioned like the leadership skills of Yzerman? Like how did he lead, and what did you think that dressing room was like?
Well, I think overall the self-belief in every player, it was not a level that I never seen. The confidence within the room that everybody knew, when if they do their job, they're going to win every game. That was kind of the feeling that they believe that the guy next to them, that they're going to do their job, that they're going to do their part. They had so many different leaders. Every night could have been somebody different that would lead the way. Stevie obviously as a centerpiece, as a captain, as the biggest leader. Didn't really have to speak all the time. When he did, everybody's ears perked up. Everybody to pay attention. But there was just so many other leaders as well that were more vocal, on a regular basis, or whenever it's been needed. Just that amount of leadership and self-belief. It was just at not a level that I never seen it anywhere else.
So was Steve more of a lead by example type of leader then, more so than a oral guy, a vocal guy?
He did both. The leadership on the ice, that was every day. You're talking about every day, or his preparation and leadership at practice, day in, day out. It was just 100% every day.
Can you give us an example of that? Because that's one thing that I talk with players about, right? Like what that looks like. What does leadership look like? because it's one thing to say it, but like when you can sit there in that locker room and you watch what he does to prepare, or you watch what he does on the ice, or what he does after practice, or what he does for games, like it looks different, right, than other people. And what were some of those things that you could look to say this was different about him?
A lot of leaders would probably have a lot of similarities, right? They were really focused. When it was time to get on the ice, they were ready to go. There was no lot of distraction. They were probably able to tune out all the noise. They were always ready to perform at their best. So the preparation that were leading up to a practice or a game, I'm sure they had a certain routine that it's been really successful for them, and that's where the consistency they were going to do it every day no matter what. So the preparation and their routine probably never changed. During a practice, I don't think not just Stevie, but some of the guys, I don't think I ever seen them to just take it a practice. If it was as a pass or just stopping in front of net after every shot, just the level of consistency that they were doing every little thing right all the time. I was That's something that was just amazing, because sometimes like for a player like me, would take a shot and do a big drive by and get back in the line. Didn't stop at the front of the net, but looking at him, he's maybe like 37 years old, and he was doing it all the time. Doesn't miss a pass. Always stops at the front. Just the little things. It was just nonstop. If you could just follow that, do that on every day, you would be so much better as a player.
I love that. Yeah, I mean that attention to detail, right? Like we are our habits. I mean, whether it's from a personal standpoint, right? Like from a personal human get through your day standpoint, or from a hockey player standpoint, you become what you do all the time. Like that's what you do. And so if you can commit to developing those good habits and be consistent with them, like and make them automatic, right? Like God, like that, you don't have to think about them. I'm sure, I mean, at 37 years old or whatever, like Steve Yzerman didn't have to think about stopping in front of the net because he's been doing it for 17 years, right? And that's just something that he had to do. So that's super cool that you recognize that. And I want to lay. Oh, I should tell you the Steve Yzerman story first. So I went to the All-Star game, I think at 12 or 13. My dad took me there, and my dad was like hilarious hockey dad, like never played the game himself, but like a little bit of a maverick, outside of the box thinker, like, you name it, like he would just find a way to get something done. And he decided that he was going to make press passes for himself, right? And this is like the old printer, like that had like the holes in the paper on the outside, and like with no digital programs or whatever. And like somehow like he expanded the font and put press on this thing, and he glued it to a lanyard. So he had this thing around his neck, and he had this old camera that he thought looked professional. And anyway, so we go down there after the NHL All-Star game. And anyways, damn straight, he gets us in, like as part of the press group, right? That he's a press guy. And so I come in with him. And so I'm like, just like this, right? Like eyes huge as saucers, and you name it. Like, everyone was there. And I think it was the 86 All-Star game, actually, in Calgary. I think Barrasso was there. He won I think he was like a rookie at the time. Izzy was there. Mario was there. But anyways, long story short, I get Steve Yzerman's stick. And the guru that I am, I decided I was going to use it in Pee Wee. So I actually used Steve Yzerman's stick, his Louisville TPS, in a Pee Wee game. Almost broke it. But now I'm smart enough. I didn't retape it though. I didn't do anything stupid as that. I left Stevie's tape on there, his knob, everything. And anyways, I got a couple tucks with it, but it's on my kid's room now, down in his bedroom with all the other sticks that I have. But so I actually used Yzerman's stick. But that's my Izzy story for you. But I want to read this for those at home. So this team that Ladislav was a part of, and he talked about the Hall of Famers, and I just opened up Hockey DB. We got Brendan Shanahan, Sergei Fedorov, Brett Hall, Nick Lidstrom, Luke Robitaille, Steve Yzerman, Igor Larionov, Chris Chelios, Pavel Datsyuk, Dominic Hasek. That's bonkers, man.
Yeah, I mean, every name, you it could be anybody's, growing up an idol, right?
Yeah, how deep of a list is that? Like, that's nuts. So Dominic won. I mean, there's other guys I didn't list, like that aren't Hall of Famers that were amazing players, like Darren McCarty's there. Thomas Holmstrom is also on that team. There's Brent Gilchrist, an unbelievable leader and a player, was on that team. So there's some really other big names there, but so we'll take the Hall of Famers, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 Hall of Famers on a team. That's crazy, man. What a dressing room. That's so. What was Brett Hull like in that room? Now I'm getting all we're diving deep on the wings, but I will tell a little Brett Hull story. Just one that I heard from a podcast, actually, because you mentioned you going to your first training camp, at 6, because your buddy said, "Hey, I want somebody to go with." So I heard, I think it was Kelly Chase who told the story about Halsey when he went to Penticton, that he didn't even he was done apparently playing hockey, and he went to Penticton on a tryout because Peach Fest was there at the time, which was there's this big summer party festival in Penticton. So he's like, I can get a free hotel room with this team by trying out, and my buddy wants to drive me there. It's like he went just on a lark, right, to go for the party. He ended up making the team, scored 100 goals in the league, go figure. And anyways, ends up being one of the best goal scorers in NHL history. So I mean, that's Brett Hull for you. What was he like in the room?
I mean, how can you accurately, kind of describe one of the best, goal scorers ever, with amazing shot? I think he was. I think you would have to understand him a little bit better. So I think majority of guys, kind of did. And he was. I would call him like a grouchy guy. He was, especially in the mornings. Just try to talk to him in the mornings. So you're probably not getting the answer that you're looking for. But he loves scoring. He loves winning. He drive a lot of offense as well. But more than anything, I think probably especially later on, just all the goal scoring stuff that he did over the years. Yeah, winning was probably the biggest driver, later on in his career. Super competitive, and just to put it in perspective, I think he was the only one that could score in Dominic Hasek at practice, because and if somebody did, Dom would have make everybody go again until he stops every single shot. So sometimes when the practice was getting long, everybody in the line was like, "Hey, just put in his pads. Let's just go home," because he was going to make us go again. So that, talking about leadership and people that were paying attention to details and be kind of perfectionists. Dom is not a level of as far as being a pro and a perfectionist. But back to Brett. He was a funny guy. I think he had a sarcastic humor. So I think that what I'm kind of alluding to, you would kind of have to know him a little bit better, not to be offended. But
Right.
Any team dinners, he had lots of stories. He was a great storyteller. He was a funny guy. Just his humor was to somebody who didn't really know him. It could have been a little bit offensive if he said something, but I think he always meant it in all good sport, good humor, and what a goal scorer though, and what a player, and an amazing person too. Just
That's
you
cool.
needed to get to know him a little bit better.
His shot was that good, hey? Was that his biggest strength? I mean, his ability to get open too, is something that just blew me away. Like how he found the space to get the shot off in the first place, right? Everyone knows he can shoot, but to do both, right? What do you think he was better at, the shot itself, or just his ability to see the game?
I mean, I would probably say that as he was getting older, he probably not be able to skate as well. I think skating, he probably will say it himself, was probably not his the greatest strengths, but he knew he had a great shot. So all he had to do is just find an open space, and he probably didn't need a lot of space to just get it on his sticks and not, back. It's already back in the net before you flinch. But kind of funny story when Pavel got there. Pavel, uh, first year in North America, didn't speak any English, and Brad was on the line with him, and he was always just giving to Pavel every time the puck didn't end up where he wanted, and Pavel didn't really understand what he was saying. All of us knew what he was saying, and we were waiting for Pavel's reaction, but he was just happy to be there, and he would always just have a big smile on his face. So I think that kind of drove even Holly even more crazy that he was yelling at him to make a better play, and Pavel was just back at him smiling, grinning face ear to ear. But he would always just tell him, point it to the spot where he's going to be, and just basically told him, you hold on to the puck, do whatever you have to do. I'm going to be right here, and when I'm ready, you just put it, right in my triangle so I can shoot. So that was their discussion about, how he's going to score more goals. And, Pavel, what amazing players as well. He was his ability to hold on to the puck and then make that perfect pass was an amazing itself. So those two worked really well together.
Yeah, he wasn't a big guy either. Like, what do you think? What did that weigh?
I think it was his full gear. He was probably 160 pounds.
Really, he was that light, hey?
In the training camp when he showed up, he still probably showed up with skates that he's been wearing for a couple of years. It kind of looked like he was going to fall over every time, but every time it was somebody were trying to hit him, he just moved out of the way, toe dragged the guys on the other side and kept going. So as far as style and his old gear in the training camp was if anybody can find some pictures from back then, it would be probably something you could laugh about it. But what a player, what a amazing set of hands, and his hockey sense was kind of like the professor, Igor Larionov himself.
Yeah, man, that's what a great environment to be in. That's super cool, and I love your story about Hasek. I mean, I think it was Kevin Adams that I had on that played with him in Buffalo, and or maybe no, it was Derek Plant. Derek Plant played with him in Buffalo. That's who I had on. And Plant said he was psycho, like with how competitive he was, like completely nutso psycho, and was the best goalie he'd ever seen, like by far. Like you couldn't score on him in practice, and like you just said, and if you did score on him, like he'd lose his mind. Like he was legitimately break water bottles. Like he'd go entire practices, he said, without anybody scoring on him. And so it's for you to say that he would make all these guys wait in line, like, so he'd stop them all. Like, that is so cool. And as a goal scorer, I mean, I was a goal scorer as well. Goalies that were like that made you and I better. They make everyone better because nothing bothered me more.
When you go for 3 weeks without scoring a single goal in practice, that's pretty. That's probably depressing for a goal scorer. After a while, you start feeling pretty bad about yourself. I was there as a kind of filler and an extra guy, so we did get an opportunity to spend plenty extra time after practices with Donald on the ice because he just wanted take even more shots after practice was done. So here and there, I squeeze in a couple, so I felt a little bit better with myself. But he was he was workaholic. He wanted everything to be perfect. You can ask any of the defensemen that played in front of him. He had a video meetings, not the coaches. He requests his own video meetings with his defensemen to telling him, where he wants him to be so he can make this stop safe. He would always tell him, I get the shooter. You clear, or you take everything. Take care of everything that's behind me or next to me, and I will always make the first save. And if he didn't, he would tell him that was my fault. That's on me. But if there was a second or third opportunity, he was always like, I might make it, but if you're in the right spot, there's no way anybody going to score on us. So
right.
He was not just on the ice, but even off the ice with the videos and the guys that play in front of him. Everybody are on the same page. They knew what he wanted to do, and I'm not saying it was easier that way, but when you know uh, that your goalie, it's always probably going to make the first stop, and all you have to do is just take care of the rebound or cover the extra guy. Your plus minuses will probably go up.
No, I love that. And I just love the message to the players listening, right? Like to this. Like he was 36 years old. He'd won how many Vezinas at that point? I mean, he was perennial all-star, one of the best goalies to ever play. And here he is after practice, like you said, taking shots with the guys that are out of the lineup. Like trying to get better.
Even if we had optional skate, obviously I was going to make sure I was there. but he never missed. He was always there. We could have had it, a while back. We were in Carolina. I think it was triple overtime, and Igor Larionov score a goal. We got back to the hotel pretty late. By the time 8, you have dinner. I don't know. It could have been like 2 o'clock in the morning. I can't remember exactly, but by the time you get to sleep, you get 4 or 5 hours, and obviously the guys that were in the lineup, nobody was coming to the optional skate to kind of get the lights going again. But before I even got there, Dom's already there. And I'm the extra guy, and this is his starting goalie. I just finished triple overtime, got 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and he's already back at the rink, getting ready, for the next game. That's another level of self belief and doing all the little things on consistent basis. Every day. Doesn't matter if you're tired, if you have a late game. He just want to be the best in the world. That was his mindset.
Yeah, that is it's a personal standard, right? I mean, that's something I love talking about with the teams and players that I work with, and is just that, right? Like Dom's standard for himself was just higher, even higher than guys in the NHL. You know what I mean? Like he had a way about how he wanted to do things that he was probably neurotic about almost. And I mean, I do want to preface that. I mean, Dom's way doesn't have to be everyone's way, right? Like we're all wired a little different, right? And we're going to get the best out of ourselves in different ways. But like for Dom, his personal standard was that. Like that's what he knew, and that's what he probably built himself around, and he didn't deviate from that. And I have mad respect for that. That's super cool.
Yeah, I don't know if he had an opportunity to talk to another goalies, or some of the goalies that were this good. What their work ethic was, like what they were doing. But I'm not sure if there was that many goalies in the league that after triple overtime in the playoffs would be the first guy in the locker room.
Yeah. At 36
next day. But like I was saying, he just wanted to be the best in the world.
Yeah.
That was his mindset, and he worked on it, or he was going to do it till he was going to play his last game.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a great message too. Like for goaltenders, like you can elevate a practice, you can elevate your team just by yourself. Like I don't know if goalies always resonate or reflect on like their personal work ethic, but being competitive on pucks and second chance opportunities, and like just having that mentality that nobody's going to score, it brings everybody up, because that's usually the part of the drill. That's sort of the end, right? Like you do the drill and then guys will come in and shoot. And I know I've had that discussion on here before too. Like goal scorers usually don't think it's the end of the drill and they're actually trying to score, where other guys are just getting the puck on net and getting back in line. But when you have that goaltender that's like, he wants nothing more than to stop you, it just brings out the competitive nature in the practice. So I totally challenge goalies out there to be the hardest worker on your team, be the hardest worker on the ice. Like that just brings everyone else up around you. And Dom's obviously an example of that. Hey there, just going to take a short break to say thank you for everyone who has been reviewing and who has been sharing and talking about the podcast. It excites me every time when I hear that there's a new place, there's a new area that has done a download, or a new city that has moved up a ranking point. in the algorithms, and I think that's fantastic because that tells me that people in a local area are listening, and they're talking about it, and they're sharing it among their hockey group or their hockey parents. And I can see the uptick on the stats. It was actually crazy. I use Buzzsprout as my podcast distribution platform. And Buzzsprout at the end of 2022 gave me like all the details, how many downloads and what cities and how many countries. And the countries one absolutely blew me away. 44 countries had downloads of the Up My Hockey podcast. I told that to my sons, and one of them said, I didn't even know there was 44 countries in the world. So yes, obviously there is more than 44 countries in the world, but it is kind of crazy to think that that this podcast has that much distribution and is that much bandwidth. So super great. I really appreciate it. The podcast is growing. Want to get it back up into the top 25 in Canada. That's my goal for 2023. I'm not a super big into stats kind of guy. I definitely want to be delivering high quality content, and I'm not really much into the marketing side of it. I'm letting the organic nature of marketing hopefully take care of itself. But it is exciting to see the Up My Hockey podcast push up the ranks and to push aside some of these bigger names with networks behind them and marketing behind them and ads behind them. So it is awesome. I want to keep rolling here in 2023. I want to get back up into the top 25. I think the highest the podcast ever was 24. So we want to set a new record for that this year. And it's going to be from people like you who are willing to say, hey, I enjoy this, and give a review. And I want to read a review right now. One came in last week, which was super awesome. It's always nice to see them to take the time, right? To take that little bit of time to put the 5 stars and to write a line or two about what you appreciate about the podcast. And this is from N. Ferguson via Apple. I think Apple is the only one that you're allowed to actually write reviews on podcasts. So if you are an Apple listener, please get that iPhone out and give a review. If you're sitting here listening right now, just pause the podcast and give a review. It does amazing things, and as far as the algorithms are concerned. But N. Ferguson writes 5 stars, awesome. Gotta love the 5-star reviews. It says kudos to Jason Podolin is the title, and it says one of the best, if not the best, podcast on developing the hockey player. His guests provide great insight into mindset, skill development, and the many paths a person can take in their hockey journey. Wow, what a fantastic line there. One of the best, if not the best, podcasts on developing the hockey player. That couldn't be more true for me. That's what I want this to be about: developing the hockey player, developing the person behind the hockey player. Everything that Up My Hockey stands for, the holistic development of the athlete. That is really what I want to do. I also want to shine a light on the different ways people get there and the different ways that make these dreams a reality. And today it's Ladislav Kohn coming over from communist Czech Republic, making his way to the WHL and grinding his way into a pro contract and turning it into a pro career. And obviously you've heard tons of stories from Kevin Sawyer signing as a undrafted free agent a month before his junior career is about to expire, to Tyson Nash fighting his way essentially into the NHL, to goodness gracious, there's just so many. Dave Scatchard, who had to win a bag skate to earn the opportunity to play for the Portland Winterhawks, and then turned into a 3rd-round draft pick in the NHL and had a long tenured NHL career. My gosh, who else is there? Derek Ryan, who didn't get drafted, was looked over, played CIS in Canada, went over to Slovakia, and then came back at 30 years old to a job in the NHL. It's so fantastic. I mean, I could go on and on and on with all the stories, but I hope what it does is just say that, if you're on the 3rd line right now of a Bantam team, or if you get cut from a junior team, or if if things aren't really going your way right now, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. What matters is what is in your heart, what is in your mind, how much you love this great sport. And if you love the sport, and if you truly have a passion for it, keep playing. Keep playing. Things will turn around. Things will get better. And the longer you're around, the better chance you have to get another opportunity. So this is Ladislav Kohn's story, though. Thank you for listening, and let's get back to his story right now on the Up My Hockey podcast. I want to go back, Laddie, to because goodness, I mean, we could talk about the Red Wings and your I mean, we will get back to your NHL, but I want to talk about you being in Czechoslovakia. And first of all, is there a pioneer there? So you said a lot of the stuff under the communist rule was covered. So if somebody was a defector or somebody was able to get out and get into the NHL, you probably wouldn't have heard about them anyways. I am not a great historian when it comes to who were the pioneers that did make the biggest impact in the NHL. But who was that? Like, who were the first couple guys that came over from Czechoslovakia and made an impact on the National Hockey League?
Well, I'm just going to allude, some of the ones that I kind of, grow up watching, leaving Czech, not so much, that they had to defect. Like, Ivan Hlinka was probably the first ones, and then there were a couple other ones, like Nedomansky and who's Frankie Musil, from some of the younger ones, Peter Nedved,
Nedved,
Peter Klima, Svoboda, some of the guys that were probably even before them, that they were kind of the pioneers that had to leave Czechoslovakia back then to kind of pursue their dreams. But things were a little bit loosened up later on. If you put enough years into the system, and if you put enough years into the national team, you were allowed to leave later on in your career to kind of maybe make some money or finally go play in the best league in the world. But all those players, they still have to pay part of their salary back to the government. So, for them to come home with some money, it was still more about, at least have the opportunity to play in the best league in the world, even though they weren't going to bring home a lot of money.
Right.
But that was kind of the only way to do it without having to defect over the borders and put the rest of your family kind of in a lot of trouble.
I thought that you would have said the Stastnys, because I wasn't 100%. I thought that they were Czechoslovakian and like, because they were
Yeah, Peter and John, they were from Slovakia, but they were part of the Czechoslovakian national team. Yeah, there's quite a few. Some of the names I could have probably researched. I could look it up.
Right. And then what about Jagger? Like, Jagger, is he
Fritcher, he was in Toronto. Some names coming back. Fritcher, Nedomansky, Stastny brothers.
And Jagger is like, he's almost 50 now, so he's like, he would have been a generation earlier too. Like, I can't remember what his draft year was, but he and is he Czech or is he Slovakian? He's Czech, right?
Yeah, he's Czech. He actually played in the same academy, the same club where I went to when I was 14 years old. I think that was his last year in Czech, so we got to watch him play. I think he's 3 years older than me, or maybe 2 years, 3 years. No, he's still playing. But I kind of grew up in an era where when I look back, or some of the clippings, we had over 80 Czech players playing a national team, playing a national league. So the footprint of players coming from Czech was huge back then. Kind of the era where Jagger was playing, Robert Lang, older ones, Yuri Hrdina or Vladi Ružička, Peter Svobodas and Frankie Musils and Hasek and many more. Like I said, the list is over 80 players every year, versus right now maybe we have 20, 30 guys at the most that they're playing somewhat meaningful role on the respective teams.
Right.
But and we have start with Jaromir talking about best player coming out of Czech Republic. You play in an era that you're supposed to measure yourself against somebody that scores 150 points every year in National Hockey League, and when you're trying to fit in with your couple points at the bottom of the list. but it was a great era for Czech hockey. We were producing a lot of talent, and there was quite a few players that were having a lot of success, and they were playing big roles on their teams, and they were always at the top of the scorings at the National League. So everybody knew who the players were and where they were from.
Right. Yeah, and it seems like, again, I mean, I haven't followed Czechoslovakian hockey, uh, obviously to the extent that you know about it, but so there was a higher percentage, you're saying, back in that time that were coming over and playing and making an impact, and then it kind of went down. There was a valley there, and it seems like right now, and that's one thing I did want to talk about. Like there's a resurgence, it seems like, especially with the draft last year and now the World Junior Championships with Czech and Slovakia both doing well on the world stage. Is the development model now increasing, in your opinion? Are they doing something different there in the last little while that's now helping develop these players?
Well, kind of what I was talking about the hockey academies. Back then there was one in Kladno. There was one in that was an army academy that was in Duklaj, and there might have been a couple smaller ones, but the pool of talent, you kind of have to be pretty good to even get considered to go in one of those academies and play there. So I think it was a lot more competitive back then. A lot of the games, were very meaningful games. There was less teams playing in junior league, so the talent wasn't really watered down. I think now almost every single team that plays in the league has an academy, and that I'm not really involved that much in junior hockey back home. I kind of follow it from the outside, kind of looking in.
Yeah.
But I think they had over 20 teams play in junior league, and for a country that size, that's just way too many. They trying to cut it down to, I think, 14 or 16, somewhere down there. I think they would be probably even better off if they just cut it down to 10. So they would be 10 teams with the best players versus 20, and then you have to split all the players between all those teams.
Right.
Uh, I think they're trying. It's not always easy. Just like everywhere else, hockey's an expensive sport. I think that's probably part of it. Me growing up in the hockey academy, when I was 14, that's another kind of story. Like the Czech nationals was for the junior teams was played in my hometown, and I think it was 12 or 13 back then. And one of the coaches from a team from Kladno were watching our practice, and he just approaches our parents if I would be interested to trying out for our academy, the following year. So talking about being in the right place, right time, just by an accident, I got invited somewhere where I would probably never be invited before if they were not playing there, and then they didn't see our practice. And
Right.
they always say, "Dude, just you never know who's watching," right? So it's one of those times that it was just a meaningful practice, in my little small town, and end up being something that pretty much changed my life.
That's crazy. And that was like, and so that period in time, that was communist time, right? So, and you said like you would you go there then, and your parents wouldn't have to write a check for that? Like that was all taken care of, your hockey, and to go to that academy?
Yeah, everything was free. I mean, Cloud Academy was, I think, if I can probably state it correctly, it was probably funded by, there was a big steel mill in a city. So I'm pretty sure it was either funded by our government or some of the money came from the steel mill.
Right.
Part of the academy, you had to go to school, to get educated to eventually, if you didn't end up playing hockey, you have to work in that steel mill for a couple of years to kind of pay for the school. So part of the school was actually a couple times every other week we had to go work in a steel mill. So talking about being humble when you have to get up 5 o'clock in the morning. Make sure you at work by 6 a.m. You're working side by side with people that have been working there for 10, 15 years, and so we were split up with the different areas, and talking about hard work, right? And then we were only there for a little bit at a time, but those people have to really do it for 10, 15 years or 20 years. So you can talk about being driven, maybe trying to find a different career from from just working watching how hard some of the people have to work, just pay the bills.
Yeah, wow, that is super cool. I wonder if that was like a little bit of strategic motivation or not. But I mean, it definitely would be. You'd be grateful for the opportunity you had to practice. It would seem like like a dream, right?
But the school was free. The dorms were free. All the players, from the first to the fourth grade, we all lived there together. We had meals there. Everything was taken care of, so we didn't really, or my parents didn't really have to worry about anything. So it didn't cost them anything, and all I had to do is just go to school and play hockey.
Right.
The work just here and there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, the word free is, I mean, obviously loaded there, living in a communist scenario. You're no cost to your parents. It obviously allowed people from any walk of life that would be a good athlete or could do something that maybe they could develop into, something that could be elite, which I think that there is some type of beauty in that. And I think that is a detractor from our sport today, without question, especially in North America. The price tag, to play, high level, in quotes, the word I hate, elite hockey is, I mean, it's just too much for people, right? Like once it gets up, and I mean, that's definitely a deterrent for stopping some really, really good athletes who might be interested from playing. But I don't know what the solution is for that, and that's not really the topic of this podcast. But cool that you were able to get involved, and I mean, obviously you're able to thrive in this scenario. How did you get from being in that hockey academy to now knowing there was a WHL in Western Canada of all places? And how did you get on a plane and end up being in Brandon and go and play in the Swift Current? Like how does that happen for Ladislav Kohn?
Yeah, talking about twists and turns, right? Being part of the academy, they've been, hugely successful about as far as growing NHL players. Talking about the younger group, but Patrick Elias was there, and then Margie Licky. Later on was Thomas Volkun was there, and Cabrera brothers, and Patreras, and the list goes on. How many players from that academy played in NHL? It's amazing. So we were well taken care of. They had great coaches, but it wasn't easy as a 14-year-old when you have to pack your bags and leave your mom and dad. It's definitely force you kind of grow up and grow up fast. And before I got where I was, kind of the first year in academy, you always have two birth years playing together. So as a 14-year-old, we were on a team with 15-year-olds. So kind of carve some ice time or play some games. I remember that the first year was hard. I wasn't going to come home. I know my parents would always kind of tell me that, why are you going all the way there? You're going to come back. And I said, I'll never coming back. So even the hard times that the first year that I was telling my son, I barely played. I was little. I got to be on a team with elite players, and most of them were a year older than me. They were already big and strong. They looked like men, and there's me, tiny little boy that never really worked out or lift weights before in his life. And all of a sudden, supposed to play on a team. So the first year was definitely a big learning experience. being on my own, learn how to take care of myself, and do all the other stuff that goes with playing hockey. Going to gym and doing the workouts and eating properly and making sure that if I was not going to play a lot, I was doing everything else outside to get in a better shape to kind of catch up because I was coming from like I said, my tiny little town where we didn't have an elite team. We didn't have our junior team didn't play in the top division. So obviously maybe the coaching and the top of the players we had there didn't prepare me for something like that. So I had basically just spend the entire year just kind of catch up to all the elite players that were there. But I wasn't going to come home. I didn't want to give my dad the satisfaction that I wasn't going to make it, and or I could I could be sad or disappointed by myself in a dorm room in the evenings or crying in the pillows. But I was just determined I was never going to show it, and spend it, like I said, spend the entire year to kind of getting better and making sure I got stronger so I can compete with these guys. And at the end, I started playing a little more. But throughout the year, I had barely any ice time, barely any points, and you know, I would say probably a lot of guys would pocket it and said this is not for me. But something I would always, if somebody told me that I couldn't do something, then I definitely made sure that the opposite happened. I just want to prove them wrong.
Was that where the fire was? Like, is that the mindset behind that? Was it that little nugget from your dad or your mom saying, "Oh, we'll see you in 2 months. You're not going to be able to handle this." That drove you through it, or was there a bit of passion in there for hockey as well, or how do you think it was?
I was always super competitive. I would say, if I was going to be honest with myself, I never, the practice times and all the workouts, that was never something I enjoy that much. But if somebody told me, I'm going to beat you at something, I'm faster or I'm stronger or I'm going to score more goals, that just sparked a lot of fire in me, and then the competitiveness. It's still to this day. So even when we do any games on anything at home, I still don't let my kids win. They have to beat me fair and square.
I love it. I'm the same way. Well, let's talk. I mean, so we didn't actually. I mean, I want to get to like how that decision gets made for you to go to the WHL. But now that you brought up that academy, and because I'm about development and how do we develop hockey players or people in general, what was it about that development model in the academy? Now looking back on it, at 47, 48 years old now, you've had a son that's gone through hockey. You saw the success on the world stage that this program was able to do and manufacture. What do you think was the secret sauce there?
Well, besides, I think we had very good coaches. They were, very knowledgeable about the game of hockey. As far as I can remember, all of them were very patient. None of them were really in a hurry to trying to promote somebody over another guy. Everybody had even playing field, at least what I felt like. And it was just if you work hard, you're gonna get an opportunity. But the setup was there, kind of unique, similar to what the prep school model looks like, where you go to school in the morning, in the afternoon. We had a gym right next to the rink with rehab center and then indoor stadium. So we did pretty much every day. We went to did a workout, played some soccer, did some agility warm ups, and went on the ice for a regular practice. And then if you want to go to rehab, you could jump into jacuzzis and take care of your body. So everything was right there, which not many teams back in Czechoslovakia had that kind of setup. And um, I think having my son at prep school. That's what kind of what the model looks like, where everything's on a campus. You don't really have to travel to go anywhere. If you want to work out, everything's open 24/7. During a practice, or if you want to stay out there a little bit longer, all the opportunities, is just up to you how much you want to use it.
Right. So access to ice. So it sounds like there's a lot of access to ice. It was right there. It sounds like there was good coaching, good patient coaches that would, don't rush, that didn't rush. How about, where do you feel that the multi-sport aspect of that system, what type of role did that play, do you think?
Yeah, sometimes especially now, I kind of struggle a little bit with. I know what it did for me. It did it for us, because I can pick up any sport I want, and I can do it. Not sure I'm going to be great at every sport, but I can play any sport I want. You can give me a tennis racket, I can play tennis. I can play basketball, ping pong. You name it, I can do it all, because growing up, both at academies, we did all the sports. We did, some of the sports just for fun, when not into like a great depth details. But over time, you kind of develop the coordination, the body movement. Um, I think that was, for us, at least, for me, that was huge, being a smaller player, to be able to just move, and the mobility of my body, to adjust. I think that played a huge role.
Yeah, I am cut from that cloth. Like, and there's people, and I think there is arguments on both sides. Like the one sport aspect, and most of the academies over here, if not all, like there's a few exceptions. I believe Shawnigan Lake on Vancouver Island is one of the exceptions, where they when hockey season is over, kind of at spring break, like the players don't go play hockey anymore. Like they have to pick up another sport, even though they came there for hockey. They have to graduate into something else. Talking to their director of hockey there, it sounds like that's a big detractor for some families, because they think, well, we're missing all these hours on the ice that maybe these other programs aren't doing. And that's the tough one, right? Is like, what allows you to keep up with the Joneses, right? And allows you to keep developing. And
That's why
I don't know.
that's kind of alluded to it. It's a hard question. You can really see how, how competitive youth hockey is. For us, we kind of grew into it naturally, with all the opportunities. Summer was off. I used to play soccer in the summer competitively. Um, my son does the same. Even when he went to the prep school, the first part of the school, he played on varsity soccer team. On the weekends, he would go play for his split season team. But I wish we would let kids be kids. Let him do other things. Slow things a little bit down. There's a saying, too fast, too soon. Sometimes, just when they throw players, young players or high draft picks into the game, they kind of rush things. Same thing, if I would say, for youth hockey. I can see it my firsthand out here in California. 6-year-old kids can do things I could barely do it when I was 10. They're amazing puck handlers. They're amazing skaters. But with saying that, they kind of have to be, because by the time they're 10, they're already forming teams and select teams, and the kids that are on it, they're really, really good. So then I can understand, when the parents looking at their kids, or they want to play on certain teams, they have goals. They always feel like everybody else doing it, kind of have to do it too. But that say, I wish people would slow down a little bit, and maybe at least in a summer, or split the season in two halves. That let the kids play half of the season a different sport and half of the season focus really on hockey. But
Right.
majority of the time, that's not the case. There's just not enough hours in the day that they're allowed to do other things. You know, I don't know if you talk to many guys that were in Finland or involved with Finnish hockey, but I spent almost 5 years in Finland. So and my wife is actually teaching at school there, so she gave me a little bit of insight how the school kind of works together with the hockey. And that their model is very, very different than from what my kids they're doing here, or anybody else's kids here in North America, where you go to school and basically they're not allowed to give them any homework. So there's no going home and doing extra schoolwork, because they just get everything done in their classes. For their PE, they usually in the winter time they go ice skating, or they just play on the ice. In the summertime, they play different sports, basketball, floorball, soccer, you name it. So before they even go back to their club teams to play hockey, they already have some kind of activity that they're working on their athleticism, but they're just having fun. It's not super organized or stressful. And having the freedom, not having to worry about homework, because a lot of our kids out here, you go from school to practice, and then you're still rushing at home thinking about homework. Sometimes the minds wander. You can't really focus on a practice because you think about how much stuff you still have to do when you get home.
Right.
Plus, you add all the travel. So I'm sure it's probably not doable, but that freedom where you go to school and you just do your schoolwork while you're there, and then you go outside and play when it's nice, or you go outside and you go ice skating in winter time, and then you can still you're free to go play for club hockey without having to stress out when you get home. You can just go eat and rest and go to bed and wake up the next day and go to school with clear mind. I think it's working really well for him. Not sure if it's doable out here, but it's definitely a nice way to grow up and do what you love.
Well, I mean, yeah, something's happening there. Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting conversation. One, yes, the homework, but I've heard that their actual like development model is quite drastically different. And I actually want to have somebody. I've been talking with a U20 coach over in Finland. I'm going to get him on the program because I want to understand more about the Finnish model. I mean, there's 5 million people or 6 million people like in the whole country, and like how competitive they are on the world stage when it comes to hockey. It's absolutely ridiculous how good they are doing. And do you know much about that? Like I heard they don't necessarily like separate players really young like we do here. Like they keep everyone together.
For a long time. A couple of years back, we had a couple of Finnish coaches down here doing a little seminar for our kind of fill us up in what they're doing in Finland. I forgot what the breakout year is for separating into better players, but I think it was somewhere up to 12 years old. They all practicing together. When they play tournaments, or they split the teams into two halves, and then they just go play. For the longest time, they don't even keep score, so the scoreboard's not even on. They're just out there having fun. It's almost like you're going on a pond with your friends. So you're counting a score in your head, but
Yeah,
there's no nobody else to kind of remind you if you're losing or winning. And then as the kids get older, then they starting to separate him. But for the longest time, it's pretty much stress free hockey. Just going out and play, and if you still love it later on and you want to keep doing it, we'll give you the resources. We'll put you on the right team, but they don't have to stress out for a long time about I'm not a big fan of the letters, but you have to have something to separate the teams, right? So talking about parents chasing the letters and stuff like that, they don't have any of that. They're just going to play for their team, or they're just going to practice. They don't have to worry about this year I'm on a AA team. Next year I want to be on a AAA team. Oh, I didn't make this team. I'm just going to play in house.
Right.
Very stress free, and I think really works for them. But when it's time to kind of separate the players that really want to pursue this, they they are really hardworking people in general. So once they separate them to the appropriate levels, then the real hockey kind of or everything kind of starts. But I think for the longest time they still have the younger groups for sure playing as a stress-free environment.
Right. And you're saying that's up to like 12 years old? Is that the number you thought it was?
Definitely 12. I want to say when they 14, kind of when they go to high schools. That's when they started separating them into really, what would be considered like the AAA level players, and then have another team to kind of keep them together. But the better players already starting to be more centralized in those clubs.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's a whole philosophical talk, right? I mean, there's so many teams now here in Western Canada, and I assume it's the same in the States, maybe in California as well. But our town here in Vernon is 45,000 people. Kelowna's down the road, and like I don't know, let's say at 10 years old, there's essentially 3 or 4 different places that you could choose to play, as a 10-year-old kid, like whether it's a HPL team or an HSL team, which are 2 private leagues, or whether it's the Vernon team, or whether you want to go, it's just like, to me, it's like that. I don't know if it's good or bad. Like there's aspects that I like about it. But there's aspects that I don't like, like there's people leaving Vernon to go pursue this elite or more. I don't even know, right? Like what the motivation is, but it's kind of nice when there's just one spot, like there's one spot. And maybe I'm a little bit of a dinosaur when it comes to that, but that's the way it was when I grew up here, right? There was one spot. You mean you played in Vernon, and you played. There was one top league. Like they did separate him at the time. There was rep or there was house, and all the good players were in one spot, and that's just the way you did it, right? It was easier as a parent, and it was easier as a player. And I'm not 100% sure what we're accomplishing, but I guess it is what it is. It's interesting to know though. Like I love hearing about what's happening in other countries, and there's a feel good aspect to what you're saying there, in some aspects, right? Like it kind of feels right, especially at that young age. Just grow the passion, keep it simple, keep it easy, be a kid, grow, and then we'll see what happens. And it's obviously proofs in the pudding, because my goodness, I mean, if you actually if you're aspiring to be a hockey player, they're obviously producing players at a very, very high rate there when it comes to their overall population. So it's kind of an interesting one to dig into. Not to mention the Czech and Slovakia are doing a pretty good job now too. So it's the European development model. There's something to be looked at there, I think, for sure. But can we go? I mean, I told you we're going to be done by noon for sure. I already have 100 questions, and we're not even at you playing in the WHL yet. But I want to go. This is more from my own personal knowledge. The political aspect of like Czechoslovakia to now being Czech Republic and now being Slovakia. Just like give me a 2-minute history on that. Like why did they separate, and why were they together in the first place? Or I don't know how you want to go about that, but I just wonder why it is the way it is right now.
Well, pretty much Czechoslovakia kind of formed in 1917 after the First World War. So that's when we started being one country. Before that, the Czech was part of Austrian Empire. So the first war kind of separate everybody else into smaller countries, or in case Czechoslovakia, kind of one bigger country. The Austrian Empire kind of let go of some of the territories that they had. So we were at Czechoslovakia for a long time, all the way to I think uh, 1992.
Yeah, you were saying, and I'm going to cut in for 1 second. So when you were growing up, did you recognize a difference between, like, I'm going to quote, Slovakians and Czech Republic, or was it just one people for you growing up?
You know, if you ask probably majority of people, it was just one country, right? Slovakia, they kept their own language, which is very similar to Czech, not that much different. Just maybe a little different dialect, or more you went east, the language changed a little bit. But growing up, I was just one country. I didn't really notice any different. You travel both areas, playing hockey. People was just as nice in Slovakia as they were in Czech.
Yeah.
There was eating same food. Like I said, maybe just drinking a little the different type of liquor, but other than that, it was very similar. Obviously, the two main cities, like around Prague, you would probably notice a difference, and then around Slovakia with Bratislava, the two capitals for each country now. Those are the only two places you would really notice if there's anything different between those two countries. Other than that, you could travel back and forth, and you wouldn't really notice that much. But politics, people have different views. People always, maybe in Slovakia, or at least what they were trying to preach, was they want to be their own country. They have their own language. They felt like maybe some of the money that were spent more in the Czech part of that back then. Maybe they felt like as far as quality of living, maybe it wasn't as equally divided as people would maybe wish for.
Yeah.
So I think probably one of the main reason was they want to govern their own country in their own way. They want to allocate their own resources and money to what they think was important for that side of the country.
Sure.
Eventually, that's what they kind of decided was peaceful. It was just a couple signatures on a piece of paper, and put up a couple border stations where they decided where the crossings are going to be, and that was about it. So,
Gotcha. You mentioned earlier that, thanks for that, by the way, because I like I said, I asked because I didn't know. You said you played on the U18 team, so the national team, which at that time was Czechoslovakian national team. You said you were part of essentially the last united national team there, and that was in 1992. And before we started press record here, we had a brief discussion about, my gosh, like how good could that team be this year when we consider the World Juniors and Czech Republic and Slovakia both doing so well individually. I mean, you combine that country, and that's a pretty formidable group. Pardon me?
It would definitely be fun to watch.
Yeah, really fun to watch. What do you cheer equally? Like, I know you're from the Czech Republic and you're from the Czech side, but like when it comes to nationalism, like do you totally support the Slovakians essentially the same as the Czech team?
Well, probably not as much, but I definitely root for them to do well. I think they had an amazing tournament this year. Even last year, they had so many young guys coming up right now for both countries. But I think Slovakia really played really well as well the Czechs this World Championship.
Yeah, and what a cool, like with the the two Slovakians going 1-2 in the draft last year. There's a player from the Czech Republic taking 5th, I think, and maybe another player. What's his name? Kulich, maybe later in the first round. That's a pretty awesome on the world stage, for these players to be recognized. and looks like there's some pretty good times ahead for both those nations. I do want to get to you before you're going to tell me that you have to go. How did you get to the WHL? What happened? How did that transpire?
I don't know why we always can allude to something else, but at the U18, I thought I had a pretty good tournament. I think I had more than a point a game. We finished third place. Back then, as you probably know, or maybe don't know, to have any agents or anybody be represented by somebody, that was something that none of us heard of. Nobody really knew, what that looks like, what they do. Something like draft, even I was not really even, on anybody radar. I don't remember anybody really talking about it. So playing that tournament, nobody really were trying to showcase themselves for somebody or any scouts. I'm not
Who was
even
at your tournament?
It was actually in Poland.
And what teams were there?
Back then, it was just Sweden, Finland, Russia, Germany. I think it was everybody else except the U.S. and Canada.
Gotcha.
So now,
because I played for Canada at U18 and U20. I think it was U18 or U17, maybe. It was a U17 tournament. After my first year in the WHL at 16, I got selected for the national team, and we went to Japan and played Japan, United States, and I believe Russia was the other team. It was just a 4-team tournament, and that was the only thing that we that national team did. And there wasn't anything bigger.
It was still only a European championship. So
so yours, gotcha.
So it was just U18. All the European countries were represented.
Awesome.
Kind of nice.
Okay, so you're there. You have a good tournament.
So yeah, we went there. We had a great tournament. The track we finished third, so coming home with medal. Doing pretty well. Had more important game. And then during the tournament, we started talking, or we got introduced to some of the agents, but none of us spoke any English, so we didn't really understand why these people are trying to talk to us or what they really want from us. And eventually, when we came home, one of the Czech agents, I guess back then, Miroslav Henish, he got a bunch of guys together, and he said, listen, I'm going to be working with these guys. They're hockey agents in North America, and would you guys be interested in signing with these guys? And we were like, sure. I don't think anybody even asked any questions like, what do they do? Why they even want to sign? I think it's just sounded cool. Miro was an amazing guy, and eventually, I think he for the sports corporation, he probably got him more than 50 clients coming in out of Czech Republic. So he was the first one. I don't think himself even spoke any English, but somehow he got connected with the agency, and then he just started signing players. So that was my first interaction with what agents do, why they even there, and then eventually actually signing with one of them, not even knowing what I was signing up for. The draft went by, and I don't think any of us from that tournament really got drafted. So fast forward there, in the summer, I was already as a 17-year-old playing in Kladno with a few games with the men's team. So the opportunity was either stay there and trying to kind of win my spot and play for men back then, which would have been huge accomplishment, as a young kid. Back then, it was a little bit harder to make the first team as a young player. The older guys, they were not going to give up their spots very easy. So even the training or the games or just how they treated all the young guys in the locker room was was a little bit different back then. I'm sure some of the older guys know what I'm kind of talking about, and it was tough. So those decisions was kind of weighing on me. Do I want to put myself through this? And I didn't get drafted, but Miro Hennish was telling me that I think that was the first time there was a WHL draft for a player. So I think on your podcast you mentioned there was just a list of players that teams would submit it. And I think that year might have been the first time they started drafting players. It was definitely first year when they started drafting European players. So every team is allowed to draft one European player per team. So I end up being drafted by Brandon Wheatkings, which I never spoke to anybody about any of that. How that happened, I had no idea. It was never anybody mentioned it to me. But when I was deciding, Miro kind of mentioned it. Hey, you've been drafted by this junior team in WHL, and would you consider going to North America, and maybe if you play well, you'll get drafted that way. So that was kind of my decision between playing on a men's team and get paid, or go play junior in the league for a team that I never heard of. I had no idea where it is, what kind of league it is, what I was going to get myself into. So that was big unknown, but just kind of relying on Miro. He's like, let's give it a try. What can it happen? Worst come worst, I'll just follow my dad's advice. You'll be home anyway. And I definitely had somewhere I could come back. So I could, if it didn't work out, I could always come back to the team that in Kladno.
So you were 17 at the time?
So I was turning 18.
Take one more quick break here from the conversation with Ladislav Kohn to remind you about upmyhockey.com and the Peak Potential Hockey Project. So the Peak Potential Hockey Project is my 4-week mindset program. You can purchase that 3 different ways. It's a solo mission by yourself. That means you take it by yourself. There's a guided mission, which includes group coaching calls with me. It's at a scheduled time, meaning the coaching call is, and it also starts at a scheduled time, meaning that a cohort takes it together. I don't offer it all the time. I offer it 5 to 6 times throughout the season. And then there's also the mentored mission, which happens at any time. It's one-on-one with me. And I just wanted to let you know, right now, this episode is being released in January. We are just starting a guided mission, January 16th, and we won't be having another one probably until April is when I think the next launch date is. But keep your eyes posted for that. And if there is any questions about what the Peak Potential Hockey Project is, by all means, reach out. There is a wait list for the next one coming up. You can also get registered before it happens. There is a maximum amount of people that I allow in there. So if you want to get in early and make sure that you do want to start training your mindset and your mental fitness heading into the off season, which is actually a great time to do it. We're not necessarily battling in games and for practices, and the schedule opens up a little bit, and it's a good time to devote some training to mindset, one of the biggest competitive advantages you can be looking at right now. Not only a competitive advantage on the ice, but a competitive advantage in life. So if you want to look up and get ready for the next one, that will be sometime in April, and you can definitely pre-register now for that, and that's at upmyhockey.com. Now, let's get back to the conversation with Ladislav Kohn. So 17 at the time, you're playing men's first division in Czech for Kladno, making money. You're a professional at that point. This guy that you knew but didn't really know well gave you this idea about maybe going to the Western Hockey League in Canada. You have really no idea, and next thing you know, you decide to jump on the plane. Like, that's huge.
That was pretty much it. And I never been on a plane before that. So
holy shit,
speak the language.
Wow.
Talking about just jumping into the unknown. once I told him, but let's give it a try. I think their Kladno team wasn't really happy about it. I think it was me, Patrick Elias, and Thomas Vokun who actually had to walk in the office there, and I think they were thinking about maybe leaving as well. And I remember in the office, the general manager, he was so upset. I think he was ready to kick us off the team, but eventually he kind of calmed down. I think he made us all sign 10-year contracts. So if we do have to come back, we were locked in for I'm sure there was very little money what we're gonna pay us. So talking about motivation. So I pretty much, if I was going to come back, I would have to stay in North America for at least 10 years.
Jeepers. So, okay. So how are mom and dad involved in this decision? Like, did they supported it? Did they give
my
you
parents
free
were
rein?
so upset, talking about the same thing with my dad. He was like, why are you even going anywhere? You can be home, you can play in the top league in Czech Republic, on a men's team. You can get paid. Like, why you want to go somewhere? But you've never been. You don't speak the language. You don't know anything about it. Like, what are you doing? And I pretty much just rely on Miro, because he was like, hey, you know what? You didn't get drafted this year. You're going to be really close to all the scouts, junior league, WHA, very good league, highly scouted. You never know, but if you don't try, you might regret it later. And like I said, coming back, I'm sure if it didn't work out, I came back, I could still play for the same team. So
let's talk about it. That's unbelievable. So you hop on the plane, first time ever on a plane, 17 years old, leaving Czechoslovakia, don't speak English, going to land in Brandon, Manitoba, of all places. And one, you're only there for 2 games, and then you end up in Swift Current. So what's that whole experience like once you get there? You probably didn't even know you could get traded. If you did get traded, I don't know what happened there, but let's talk about that.
I think as some of the early days, I wish I could kind of reconnect with some of the players, because you go somewhere where you have no idea what's going around you, because you just don't understand the language. I don't think many people can really relate to it. It's you just rely on hand signals, and maybe looking up the words in the dictionary, and trying to put a sentence together, or kind of trying to figure out what people are saying. So I think for a few years that was probably the hardest part. I knew as far as hockey, I was going from playing with men to playing playing back with kids. So that part I didn't feel like was that difficult. On the ice, I felt I can play. I can play better than all the kids that were there, or just as good. But not to be able to be part of the conversation, or not be able to kind of understand what people are saying. I think that was probably the weirdest thing. And I think when I got to Brandon, I was there for a training camp, and I didn't understand what anybody was saying, but I was just happy to be there. I was always laughing, always had a grin on my face. And maybe you can ask Marty or any of the guys from Brandon, that they can fill you in what's going on. But from kind of what I felt like, I think Bob Lowe was the head coach. I don't think he really enjoyed, or he didn't share my enjoyment for the game as much as I did. I think he probably wanted different things from me, and if I did something that or I didn't do something that he was asking me to do it, and he would let me know. I didn't really know what he was saying, but I think he was probably pretty upset that I was just playing a different way than he wanted me, and all I could just give him back was just my big grin and big smile. And I think that kind of drove him crazy for a while. And if the coach throwing a few F-bombs here and there at you probably know he's just not saying hello. So
you're like Pavel. You're the Pavel Datsyuk of the Brandon Wheatkings, smiling at Brett Hall.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that was. Yeah, that's I can relate to Pavel now. Yeah, that's for sure. Hearing it from Brett, but I think that's kind of the Bob. Like, I think he was frustrated because I think I was the only Europe. I think there was only 3 Europeans in the entire league that time, and for him that was his first experience, right? So he probably didn't know how to deal with it. There was nobody else that could speak Czech on that team or even that in that city. So one day he just came to the. I think after first 2 games, regular season games, they just came to the locker room with the bus ticket. So I don't really know what was going on, and then there's a bus ticket, and they like come to the office. You have a phone call, so I follow him in the office. I got on the phone, and it was my junior head coach from my national team from back home.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just saying, "Hey, I'm an assistant coach here in Swift Current, and we just made a trade for you." He was, obviously saying that it's going to be a great situation for you, and I can translate and I can help you out. Play here till you get settled or you start picking up some English. And I was like, well, "So this is what the bus ticket is for?"
Oh my
He's
gosh.
like, "Yeah, all right. Somebody's gonna pick you up at the bus station." So said hello, so said goodbyes to the billets, to the boys, and just packed a couple of my bags and got on the bus. The only problem is, I don't know the bus routes. I don't know how. Nobody, they probably told me how long the bus ride's going to be or where I'm going, but I didn't really understand what was the station I was supposed to get off. So I was just trying to study the ticket and kind of, pick out the names, but I wasn't sure, where do I find the right name for the bus station for the city where I was supposed to get off. Thought I kind of knew, so I don't really remember how long the bus ride was, but I didn't sleep at all. I was just every station. I was just looking and trying to comparing my bus ticket if I'm at the right spot. No, it doesn't match. So that was kind of a lonely ride. I think that was the only time that was I kind of felt lonely and kind of sad or kind of questioned what the hell am I doing? I'm doing.
Right.
I'm on a bus ride, but finally I find a match on my ticket and the name, so I got off. Of course, there's nobody there, so I was like,
Oh,
but I waited a few more minutes, and then Martin Urban, who was the assistant coach in Swift Current, he came and picked me up, and after that, everything was great. He was obviously the translator until at least could start pick up some sentences, understand a little bit what was going on, but until then. I don't think very many people can relate to it or kind of imagine.
oh God, no. Of course. How could you? I mean, that's why I think I'm so fascinated by it. Like fascinated, like that decision to do that. The bravery and the courage and everything else that's going on there. I mean, to accomplish what you did with not knowing anybody is at that age too, 17, 18 years old, like nuts. And then you performed well on the ice too. Like you said, your stats were fantastic. You're a point a game guy your first year, and then essentially led the team in points next year. Well, I guess Paul Vincent was a little bit ahead of you, but whatever, a major contributor, right, in the program, and did get drafted. You ended up getting drafted in the 7th round after your rookie year there. And how do you remember your time in the WHL and that experience there, and overall now?
The funny part. Well, obviously, I'm sure there's lots of stories I can probably come up with, but very first game, I haven't even met my billets. We go straight to the game. We play a game during the first game. I think I heard the expression on your podcast, the WHL cross check. Sure enough, right in my face, broke my tooth.
First game.
Before I even the first night I was staying at the hotel or with Martin, I can't remember, before I was going to move to the billet house. So the first time I even met my billets, I had to go to dentist first, get my tooth fixed, and when I met him for the first time, I'm missing a tooth, and it's my after my first game, I got blood on my face, and uh, trying to settle in. And welcome to the WHL. I guess it was my third game already, but first game for my new team, and that was my welcome.
So you rode the bus from Brandon to Swift Current, and you had a game that day, essentially, or were you in the
Oh,
hotel?
the next day. Sorry,
The next day.
next
And
day.
then so you take the cross check, and just I don't know how like I obviously I know the environment that I grew up in here, and with the BCHL and playing there at 15, and the toughness of hockey back in the day. Like, was that a big transition from Czech to WHL? Like losing the tooth, for instance. Like, was that something that you played through? Like, did you finish the game? Was that something that would be abnormal to finish the game? Like, talk to me about that whole aspect.
For me, I think why I kind of stood out, playing in Czech. I was, for some whatever crazy reason, on the ice, I was kind of for a European. I don't know how you remember me, but I always feel like at least playing in Europe, I was more aggressive than everybody else. I always kind of felt like I had a little bit chip on my shoulder wherever I went, whatever the circumstances were, because there was always something that bothered me. Even as a little kid, the first line of kids were all kids. Their parents were the team manager, the friend of the coach. So I always made sure at practice. I worked so hard that I don't think they liked practicing with me ever, because I would just go after him all the time, because I was so upset that I should have been on that first line, and they were on that line instead of me. So that was always, like the internal motivation, just kind of proved that, if you're gonna be better than me, you better earn it. And if you are, yeah, I'll tip my cap hat to you. But if you're not, and I'm just gonna try kind of prove that I can be just as good, or kind of surpass you. So for that kind of model my style of play, and I'm sure the coaches probably weren't too happy out, because I always get lots of penalties, and that was kind of my style playing in Europe. So I think that kind of, as a transition to the North American hockey style, it kind of actually probably helped me, because that was more of my style. That I enjoyed smaller ice. I think that I hated the big ice. By the time you get a puck, it just take half an hour, because you have to skate so far. On a smaller ice, you could take a shot and then retrieve it on the other side, because it was just such a small area, small space. So that the game was just a lot faster. It was kind of the game that I enjoyed. I don't know if I'm a very patient guy. I just like, the constant action and then body contact. So that definitely, the transition being on North America, I think was a lot easier than I probably thought, and I really enjoyed it. The part I did not enjoy was, like I was saying, I think there was only 3 Europeans in the whole league. So pretty much every night it was somebody that, wanted to beat up the European. It was it was just nonstop. I think the worst guy was Darcy Tucker. I talked to him about it throughout the years. We played against each other in the minors, and he was nonstop every time we played it. He was in Kamloops. But every team, every night, and I think the fact that I just smiled a lot, I think that irritated everybody even that much more. Half of the time, I really didn't know what they were saying, but like I said, I could probably figure out pretty quick that they were just asking me, how am I doing, my day going. That part was. I'm not sure if I enjoyed it, but sometimes I just found it funny. So I probably just laughed even more. Sometimes I had to fight, because there was no escaping, and I wasn't trying to run away from anybody. But I think after a while, when players saw that I can stand up for myself, and I wasn't just gonna laugh it off or skate it away, and I would hit it back or hit him even harder next time I see him in a corner. I think that part got better, and every team, even our team, we had a few guys who once they saw that I can contribute to the team and I could put up points and score goals. I had some protection on my back as well. So.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you definitely earned the respect. Do you remember your first dust up? Do you remember your first WHL fight?
I don't. I'm not sure if I can find it anywhere, but I sure as a European, I can see I had a lot of penalty minutes wherever I played.
Yeah, I know you weren't shy of an altercation. That's for sure. I remember that in St. John's too. We had a lot of guys that kind of had our back there as well, but there was our own battles that we had to fight, and you were definitely willing to get in there. Anyway, I want to respect your time, man, because you said you wanted to be done by 12. You had somewhere else to go, and we're just getting into the good stuff. I love. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about the AHL and
I got
your
18 minutes, but I don't know how much you can use of this recording.
Oh, I can use it all. This is fantastic. So, like, at what point did you start? And you had some really cool names on that Swift Current team, like Ashley Buckberger, like one of the best humans that I remember ever playing with. Brad Larson, obviously coach of Columbus now, and was captain there and a World Junior champion twice, captain of the Canadian team. There's Tyler Willis was a unique personality, that was a good hockey player and tough as nails. Like, you had an interesting group there. Like, at what point do you remember being able to actually connect and, you're contributing, earning respect on the ice, but how did you, when did you start feeling a part of things in the dressing room, just from the language barrier is concerned?
The saddest part is that I never really, I know the guys took me in, I always felt like I felt loved by all my teammates. They were always super nice, but the language barrier is just, you're never part of a conversation. And even if you want to be, you don't really know. You don't understand what they're talking about, right? So a lot of times I relied on the assistant coach to kind of be the translator, but he couldn't be there all the time, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of lonely times, a lot of lonely nights. But we did have some fun. My abilities were great about bring all the boys over to their house and letting us kind of have fun. But you still, even that you in a group. I guess you do feel like you're part of a team, right? They bring you in, they make sure you're included in all the parties or dinners or a team or on a bus, but just not be able to be part of the conversation. I think that's definitely hard. That really be like fully invested
Sure.
in the team.
So how did you so I can relate on one level. Not really at all, actually. But when I went to Germany, I wanted to learn German. Like, that was kind of the thing that I was like, okay, if I'm going to be over here and be a professional young guy, like, I want to develop and I want to grow, and I'm like, I want to come back with a language. Now, the problem in Germany was there was 14 other Canadians or North Americans on the team, right? And so the conversation in the locker room was English. And a lot of the German players wanted to improve their English. Like, they would, even if I wanted to talk German, they'd want to talk English with me, right? So you were up against that. So no matter no matter what language courses I took or lessons, and I did do both, and I would try and use it in public when I could, I just never got the language. I mean, I do think that there's a little bit of just for me and the way my brain works, like, languages aren't easy for me. So I never accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. However, you totally immersed. Like, were you trying to take English? Were you like, how did that go for you? And when did you get over the hump of being able to now talk and communicate?
Well, I think early on, the Swift Current Broncos, they put me in a community college to start taking English classes, and just being around the guys. We, like I said, they really made the effort to, so I felt included. They would bring me everywhere. I don't know if they were just bringing me to kind of show me around. Hey, this is he's from Europe. He's from Eastern Europe. Look at him, or they just want to really hang out with me. But everybody were always trying to every day teach me a new word. They would quiz me on it, so that was kind of fun way how we kind of interact. And like, what were we learning yesterday? And today's new word. So we kind of went about it our own way. But
Cool.
it takes time, right? There's even if you take all the classes, it takes a little bit of time. Just kind of start picking up, just kind of hearing the sound of the language. I did watch a lot of TV, so I think that helped quite a bit. My wife is always making fun of me because early on, like my only jokes were just quotes from funny movies. That was my interaction to be a funny guy, just throwing quotes from Dumb and Number and a lot of other comedies that I could get to watch in late night TV. But yeah,
That's funny.
it always takes time before you feel confident enough. Like even now, to be loud and obnoxious, it takes a little bit of confidence or really being in the right setting for me. Even now, after years and years of speaking language, and then I think I kind of master it or kind of had to running hockey programs out here, just running banquets and doing meetings and talking to everybody. But people always say, "Oh, when you talk on the phone or when you check, you're so loud." And I think that's part of just the confidence in the language. Uh, Always English is going to be my second language, so I think that goes kind of with it. And then it took a long time, but everywhere I play, the guys were always want to hang out, and that was the only way. Kind of just don't stay away. Always make the effort. Go hang out with them, even if you're not part of the conversation. At least you're out there. You're listening. You're laughing. You're having a good time. Throwing a few jokes here and there, and uh, just to make the effort. You're being a part of the team and enjoy everybody's company.
Well, I'm glad you had a good experience there, and the boys treated you good. I fondly remember Spokane. I've talked about Spokane on the podcast lots. 4 years there, and formative years, right? Super formative years, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, right? Like when you're growing up, trying to figure out how to be a man, and being around the locker room matters for sure, right? And what those influences are and what you're doing.
It's a tough league. Tough
Yeah,
league. You know, not
tough
just
league.
playing there, but playing with some guys that were really tough, right? And then those guys made it in NHL, and then see those guys fight in those games against even tougher guys. I
Yeah.
always kind of shake my head. How did I play with these guys? How did I play against these guys? It's kind of amazing.
It is great. The mindset of it all is kind of nuts, and yeah, for sure, it was tough. I like you said, you were cut a little bit from a different cloth, and when it came to traditional Europeans, you definitely had the skill set and of what you would think a European player is, but you did have that chip on your shoulder, and you weren't going to turn around and skate the other direction too often. So that you came to the right league, I guess, with the right personality. Maybe we got 6 minutes left or 5 minutes left, and we've talked about the World Junior a little bit. I think I played World Junior. We won gold the year after you played. You played it in '95, and that was in Canada, I believe. And I think that was like one of the
In Red Deer, I did. It was during the lockout too.
right. Like that was one of the best Canadian teams ever assembled because there was NHL players that came back. Kind of similar this year. Like a lot of guys were returned. But yeah, what was that like? You had already played pro at that point in Czech. I don't know what the attendance was like there. You'd been on the WHL, and some of the rinks out east there were more like barns than arenas. Yeah, us in the West, we had some pretty bigger facilities. But like getting into that tournament there in '95 with the sold out barns and the atmosphere and the TSN coverage and all that stuff, like that must have been a pretty cool experience for you.
I want to say, as far as the experience, probably on one hand, the most memorable. It was an amazing experience, but on the other hand, probably the most disappointing too, because you look at on the roster that we had, or even the guys that got injured. I think out of the 24 guys, 20 guys end up playing in NHL.
Wow.
To this day, when you talk to guys that were on the team, we're so close to definitely bring home a medal, and so far away the way we ended. I think everybody were kind of disappointed how it turned out, but the biggest game that we probably had was against Canada in Saddledome. It was sold out from start to finish. You couldn't hear a word on a bench. For any of us that ever experienced that for the first time, it was just overwhelming. But we had an unbelievable game. We were leading we were up. I think we were up 4-3. Can't remember what the final score is. Maybe 5-4, 6-4 because we pulled a goalie at the end. But towards the end, we're up. We're winning. We're going. We're going to get a medal. We're going to we're going to beat Canada. And then Peter Chan takes a bad penalty, and Canada ties, and right away they score after that. We pull a goalie. I think they score another one. But as far as experience, how loud it was and how people were excited because there was no hockey all year, and all of a sudden, you get thrown in a game like that with that many fans. It was definitely special, and all the guys that were part of it. I think we're all going to remember it in good and bad way.
Yeah.
For the outcome and the way we finished, but the caliber players we had there on the roster, all those guys had a pretty amazing careers, and like I was saying, I think 20 out of 23 guys eventually end up playing in NHL.
Yeah, that's wild. That's a great team, and that was one of those kind of like epic historic comebacks from Canada, right? And it sucks to be on the other side of one of those stories, right? So I totally can understand what you're saying there. But what a cool tournament, and I mean every year it's one of those ones like for me, and I don't know how you are with it. Like before I played on it, it was huge, right? Like it was one of those things, and the way TSN does it in Canada, it's just always been a part of the Christmas tradition. How do you not get around 20 teenagers, on an international stage with this coverage and be excited about it, right? So as a young player, I loved watching the Eric Lindroses and the Eric Dazes and the Haggertys and you name it, the Niedermeyers. Like I saw them all come up and play there, right? And then you get to play in it. I mean, fortunate enough for us, we were able to win gold. And now as a 47-year-old man, like that's the only time of the year I'm screaming at the TV. Like I swear, like I love watching that tournament. I mean, it's so easy to be a fan of that tournament, and I think they do a good job with it. And it's awesome that there's like the parity now too, right? There's a lot more parity in the tournament, which is exciting to see too. So I'm glad you're able to be a part of it as well. I think that's something that if anyone who's ever lucky enough to play in it, and I had that conversation with a few guys, I mean, me being one of them, obviously now, like that was one of the coolest things I did. Right. I mean, I played the NHL. I scored an NHL goal. I didn't get to win a Stanley Cup or anything like that. But like to be a part of that tournament, to represent Canada, your country nationally, and to do that is pretty special. And that's something that no one can ever take away from either one of us. So cool on you for being able to do it. Did you ever represent Czechoslovakia nationally, like at a world championship?
Yeah, I played world championship. What year was it? It was in Quebec. Was it 2008?
Did you do an Olympics?
I didn't do Olympics.
One world championship.
Look at the names that were ahead of me.
Well, I always ask now because it's crazy. The guys like I don't know, like Dusty Emu, for instance, like played in the Olympics, like with he was a goalie of mine in Japan, and he played for Japan at Nagano. Like super cool, right? Like sometimes there's some names that just
I wasn't part of that elite group.
Right.
We probably sent 2 teams back then that would still do well. But yeah, to kind of compete with that level of talent, like for me, I look back, I'm like, as a kid coming from such a little town in southern part of Czech Republic, from Moravia, to do all the things I got to do, be all the places, meet all the people, have all the opportunities. I over accomplish everything, but beyond my dreams any wild dreams I had ever had. So.
Well, buddy, I know you got to go, and we didn't even get into your draft story or getting into the minors and, all the success you had there. And then
I
finally,
think I'll throw in a quick one for the draft because even though I had a great year, being drafted, it wasn't a guarantee because I already missed my draft year. So the following year, I was drafted as a year later.
yeah.
But my agent was talking about, hey, you play really well, you might get a chance drafted. Come to the draft. And I was like, I don't want to worry about it. So it was. I think the draft was on Saturday. We're in the bar. I was a few deep. I got a phone call. I think back then we already had a little cell phone, so that was kind of a perk, cool thing to have. And uh, I look at my phone. It's a number from North America, so I better pick it up. So I just ran outside, and my agent's telling me that I got drafted, and I was probably pretty tipsy to kind of give him an answer. But as soon as I came back, I was like, "Let's go, boys!" So for the rest of the night, I was host for everybody else to kind of celebrate it. But yeah, I didn't even make it to the draft. I just found out I was out.
Well, yeah, it was in Hartford, right? We were the same draft year because like you said, you missed your year. So I was in Hartford. Yeah, what a bad town.
In one of my favorite local bars.
Yeah, there you go. Good. You probably had more fun than I did. So that's perfect. All right, buddy. Well, maybe we'll have to continue this conversation. I mean, we could have talked about Jacob too, and even working together and mindset, and obviously from your experience till now, like the way the players, adapt and what they're going through and all that. There's so much we could talk about, but I really appreciate you. I can't believe we
I
spent
could probably
2
have
hours.
another 6 hours because I played 2 years in Russia. I got endless stories from the all places I played, all
I
the
believe
coaches,
it.
and then players I was with. So
Well, even The Rock. We didn't even talk about The Rock. We could have a whole episode just on The Rock.
and a rock, yeah. I loved it and I hated it. I just want to get out of it as soon as possible. So
Oh my gosh. Well, maybe we will. We'll have to have a part 2, I swear, because I'd love to hear about Russia.
What are people that out there? I met so many wonderful people out there. I was just I want to make it to the NHL so badly that going from St. John to St. John's, it was just it was eating me. It was eating me alive. I don't know how to play. I thought I played pretty good. Maybe that's why I got called up and kind of stayed up for at the end of the year. But yeah, when you're talking about going to places, I never dreamt that. When I get traded, that's another funny story. In the summer, I'll throw it in really quick. We we had a great run with St. John. All the way to the finals. We ended up losing Game 6. Disappointed. Very long season. So as soon as I got home, went with a couple of my boys. We went on a trip to Africa. So as we coming back, we were at the airport, waiting for our luggage. And back then there's no Instagram, there's nothing. You get the news from the newspapers, right? So
yeah.
One of my buddy goes go grab a sports paper, and while we're waiting there, he's reading the sports section, and all of a sudden he starts telling me that I'm in Toronto. I was like, what are you talking about? And he was literally, it says, Ladislav Kohn was traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs for Cooper. I don't know who else was part of the deal. And I had no idea. So as soon as I got home, I was like, I better get on a call. If this is even true, but he was in the paper, so it must have been true. So that's how I found out I got traded back then, just at the airport, just reading the newspapers, coming back from a vacation.
Oh my gosh, that's a riot. You read about your own trade coming back from Africa. That's cool. Yeah, July 2nd, man, was when that happened. So yeah, that totally stories align there, man. And then yeah, well, I know, like I said, you got to run, but thank you so much, Laddie. I know we'll be in touch, obviously, after this call, whether it's for another podcast or not, we'll see. But I will see you again, and thanks so much for sharing your stories. And God, like I wish, we played together for a full season. I said that before, and like without
Yeah,
Hockey DB and not knowing your story,
yeah,
like we never
there are some
talked about
stories
it.
about me. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one thing I never watch any of my games I play. I don't know about you. Have you ever watched yourself play?
Just recently, like from back in the day, like my dad gave me a big box of VHS tapes that he had, right, that I'd never seen before. So like it's been a couple months though, but I did spend like 2 or 3 days like looking back over some old stuff, some of my old NHL games, some of my AHL games. But yeah, I mean that's until 2 months ago, I hadn't seen myself play in probably
Yeah, I
25 years.
watch a few highlights here and there, a few clips. My son made a point to show me a few fighting clips that I was involved with. I had few interviews or a few banquets that I was doing speeches. I just don't like listening to myself. I'm probably not going to watch this podcast over to listen to myself blabbing away. But that's one thing I just I don't know. It seems kind of weird watching myself or listening to myself. It just kind of feels strange to do it. So I was just wondering if somebody else kind of doing the same thing. But
Right. Yeah, no, like I mean, I'm at a age now where I did actually like looking back because what you remember isn't maybe very accurate. At least for me, like what it was like or what the game was like, and um, so I don't mind it. I just don't have the time to really do it. And plus, there's like almost zero footage that I have to even look back on. Like I really legitimately have that box of tapes that my dad gave me. I don't even know what's on half of them, but I did see a Florida game versus the Red Wings, which was really cool to see. Like 2 or 3 penalties that game on me, like from the Russians, Konstantinov and Fetisov, that would be like match penalties today. And one got called as a minor penalty. Like phenomenal to watch. Like like I didn't remember either of that. I got cross checked in the head twice and speared once. Like so cool to go back and watch that kind of stuff. So I don't mind looking at it. Now I'm more of like a distant observer, right? I don't even feel like it's me anymore. But it's kind of interesting to watch. But I have nothing from St. John's. Do you have anything from St. John's?
what's that?
Do you have anything from St. John's?
Do you?
I have no footage from St. John's. Like nothing. Like not
I
nothing.
got a couple magazines,
Yeah.
but that's about it.
I would love to see actually a couple games back in that old rink that we played in, like just to see what that hockey was like.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's
Anyways,
definitely some stories from the old days from St. John's, and there, we played with some good players there too. That's why I'm saying I'm so grateful. There's along the way I play with some amazing guys, and they never really played. Maybe here and there, their career to different paths. So it's always very humbling to look at my career and say, why me kind of thing,
right.
almost, what did I deserve to get more games than the other guys? Sometimes I wish I was in those rooms, kind of listen into the decisions that we went into, who gets to go play, who doesn't, what did I do different than the other guys that I got the opportunity over the other guys, or sometimes I felt I was better the guys that were getting the opportunities.
Yeah,
So
it goes both
goes,
ways.
but
Sure.
at the end of the day, yeah, very grateful for anything I got in my life, all the things I got to do.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now, one, I played with you, so you definitely had the talent, but knowing your story though too, and how your internal makeup is, like, gosh, that must have been a big reason, in a lot of ways that you just kept showing up, and like I'm sure the decision makers saw that as well. I'm sure that came out. So I'm sure mindset and your passion for the game had something to do with it as well, as long as your skill set and your talent. So they're making right decisions. I think you got what you needed, and you probably deserve more games than the 186 that you got probably at the end of the day. But hey, like I said, every game's a gift, and we got to play for a long time. So pretty cool, man. Thanks for sticking around with us, and until next time. I look forward to our next conversation.
I'm sure we'll probably talk very time soon.
You betcha, man. Thanks for being on today. Really appreciate it.
All right, no worries. Have a good day.
Thank you for sticking around to the end of that conversation with Ladislav. Goodness gracious, he said he had to go. Laddie said he had to go at around whenever he said he had to go. So I was trying to respect his time. Obviously, you heard there that we kind of kept going, and then we finally cut it. But then we ended up talking for another 20 minutes afterwards, and that's when he told the story about sending the picture back to his teacher of his first pro paycheck, and we talked about some other funny stuff from back when we were playing. So anyways, we could have got into even more of Laddie's career and his NHL time and the story of him. I mean, his rookie year with Calgary, I believe he was first or second in points. He almost won the Calder Trophy in the AHL. That went to Darcy Tucker, so he was a finalist for the Calder Trophy with Darcy Tucker. Came back to camp the next year after coming over and being a rookie in the AHL, being second or first in the team in points. Had a couple games, scored in his first NHL shift. I don't think we covered that either in the interview. And he thought he was going to have a really good chance, obviously, to make the Calgary Flames the following year. Why wouldn't he? Played hard, played well in a really tough American Hockey League team, and had about 100 penalty minutes. And like I said, performed well. And he came to camp ready to go, and he didn't even get an exhibition game. He was one of the first guys to get sent back. And yeah, talk about adversity. Talk about resilience, to show up and to keep going and to be able to lick your wounds and to have another good season and trying to look forward, to the next opportunity when you felt that you've already earned the opportunity that you're not getting. So anyways, lots of great stuff there from Ladislav. I love his story about Hasek. I love hearing Dominic Hasek stories. I love the time we spent in Detroit in the locker room and even covering life in Czechoslovakia, in communist Czechoslovakia, and what that was like in the steel mill, and how the players had to go take a shift in the steel mill, and how that perspective really helped strengthen Ladislav's passion for the game and his willingness to go all in with it, and to hop an ocean to go play junior hockey in the WHL. Man, it was really great stuff. I really enjoyed that interview. I think that there's a lot of takeaways there, and I'm sure that you found some of your own from the 2 hours, I believe, that we talked together. So I'm going to try and do a series, I think. Well, not really necessarily a series, but I do want to cover some of the European countries and what hockey looks like there. And I mentioned about the Finnish hockey coach that's now in the Pro League that I've been talking to. I have some connections back in Germany. Their junior program and their youth program has definitely come a long way over the last few years. I have some contacts in Switzerland. Their program has made some strides. And I want to talk to some of these European places and see what is going on there. What are they doing right? And how are they continuing to produce these world-class, talented players when we're not dealing with great population sizes? So you can look forward to that. I've just had an interview with Scott Tinkler, which will be the next interview out. Scott Tinkler is not a hockey name you will know unless you are an avid, raving fan of the Florida Panthers, because Scott was the equipment manager, the associate equipment manager of the Florida Panthers for almost 15 years. And he was there when I was there. And that conversation is absolutely fantastic. At least I absolutely loved it. The stories and perspectives from Tink were great. So you can look forward to that being the next episode. And then I'm going to be trying to, like I said, get over into Europe and find some guests over there, as long as some other amazing guests that I have on the short list here. So 2023 is going to be fantastic. Thanks so much for being here. And until next time, play hard and keep your head up.